Good morning, Drink Less, Feel Fresh family. Tommy Cartwright here, founder of Drink Less, Feel Fresh, and host of the 30-day Drink Less, Feel Fresh Detox Challenge. I'll be looking after you today for this week's episode of the Feel Fresh Monday classes. You can come live. You can join these live. Just head to drinklessfeelfresh.com and you can register. Alternatively, if you're watching this on YouTube, hello, or if you're listening to this on Spotify whilst you're driving your car or whatever else it is that you might be doing, then welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the place in the space where we kickstart our week feeling fresh AF. If you're on an alcohol reduction journey, if you're looking to change your relationship with alcohol, if you're just looking to drink less and feel fresh, and you want a great way to kickstart the week for probably two reasons. Number one, having conversations that matter to you regarding a goal or an outcome that you have at hand, for example, changing your relationship with alcohol, is absolutely fundamental to experiencing the long-term results that you want. I'll say it again, having the tough conversations that matter most, having the conversation at the forefront of your mind. You know, most people have this conversation on a Thursday when they've gone through the week and they're feeling a bit tired and they start thinking, oh, do I want to do this thing where I drink again? You've got to have the conversations to remind yourself what actually matters to you. And because of that, your chances of success on not only experiencing the result you want, but actually enjoying the journey along the way skyrocket. Now, the other very, very important reason, and I think it's a great way to start your week feeling fresh AF, is when you know you're coming to these classes live at 8 a.m. every Monday morning, Australian Eastern Standard Time, you have a great reason why to have a fresh weekend as well. You know, you've got a great 15, 20 odd minute class that you can tune into to kickstart your week feeling fresh AF, and no one wants to come to a fresh AF class with a hangover. In saying that, team, today we are diving into rationalization and justification when it comes to your relationship with alcohol. It's short, it's sharp, it's down the lines. One of the things most people ask me is, Tom, what's the best way to change your relationship with alcohol? And one of the things that I can share with you is just simply, how do I want to say this? Don't drink during or after rationalization and justification. Okay, what does that mean? You know you have an issue with alcohol. You know you have a relationship with alcohol that you want to change when you constantly find yourself justifying the reasons on why you should have a drink. Okay, so we're about to open up a rabbit hole of what justification and rationalizing a beverage actually does to the brain and how it can dramatically negatively impact not just your relationship with alcohol, but to be honest, your relationship with your own level of self-worth and your own level of confidence. So when it comes to drinking alcohol, if we are someone who lives in the moment, what living in the moment means is there is a lack or an inability to need to justify. Does that make sense? When you're living in the moment, you don't need to draw at straws, so to speak, on why you're allowed to have a couple of beverages or why you should have a couple of beverages. In fact, the only reason why you should ever have a beverage is because you consciously tell yourself, if there was a reason, is because you just want to. You know you've developed a really healthy relationship with alcohol where your only reason why you have a beverage is because I want one. Because I want one. And a lot of people would say to me, well, Tom, what do you mean? Because isn't that how a lot of people think? Don't a lot of big drinkers and alcoholics just want? No. Anybody who over drinks alcohol to the extent that it causes them pain and suffering is not doing it because they want to be doing it. They're doing it because of a long list of justifications, either consciously or unconsciously. It's because they're tired, they're shitty, someone said something, they're feeling grumpy, annoyed, frustrated, anxious. If it's not that side of the scale, it's the other side of the scale, which is, well, we're trying to have fun. We just wanted to celebrate. Well, I was just trying to let my hair down. And so we have a long list of justifications and rationalizing story when it comes to drinking alcohol. So you can notice that straight away. That'll quickly and quite dramatically change your relationship with alcohol just to get the ball going. Is how often am I living in the moment where I say I want to have a beverage and I want to have a beverage and I have a beverage, and how often am I justifying why I'm having that beverage? You know, that tug of war. We generally work with people who are obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but generally at the stage of the tug of war, which means they want to have a beverage, but they don't want to have a beverage. They're feeling like they want to drink, but they're wishing that they didn't. And they get caught in the justification of it. Well, maybe I can just have one. Or maybe I have two. What if I have two and I drive home? What if I go to the event and by now you're starting to play into rationalizing having a beverage? So rationalizing and justification, or justifying, in my mind, is pretty much the same thing, specifically in the context of your relationship with alcohol. Couple of things that I'd like to share with you if you're really enjoying this call. If you're watching this live, or if you're listening to this as you're driving a car along, it could be years later. Just ask yourself, how often do you feel that you're living in the moment and you feel like a drink and you choose to have a drink and that's it? And how often do you spend in justification? Now, to give you a little bit of a hand with this, notice some people actually start their beverage consumption. Let's say it's a Wednesday night. They start their beverage consumption living in the moment. This is the tricky problem. They, oh, I feel like a beverage. And they have a beverage. And after their second or their third, they start to play justification. So here's the kicker. Here's the best bit about this class. This isn't about whether you drink or not. This is not about, do you drink alcohol or do you not drink alcohol? It's about, when it comes to your relationship with alcohol, when does justification kick in? And if you can become aware of when you start rationalizing and justifying why you should have another beverage, well, then that's the part of your relationship with alcohol that is due to change. For some people, it's the first one. Some people, they get home and they think, oh, I'm going to grab a drink. And they think, no, crap, I'm not doing it. I can't have a drink. I'm on a 30-day detox. But you know what? I've done 28 days. That's pretty good. In fact, yeah, it's been a long day. And you start justifying and rationalize why you can have a beverage. But for other people, it's actually after the second drink or the third drink. So that's the biggest insight from today. It's not about whether I drink or not. It's, when do I start justifying my behavior? And if you enjoy learning that, well, you can take this into pretty much any and all behaviors that potentially are hindering your chances of more success and a higher quality of living. When am I starting to justify it? You can really clearly separate the difference between living in the moment and justifying your existence. Now, not to get off topic, but to dive into the rabbit hole a little bit, personally, if you're listening to this in Australia, I believe in this country, in this culture, a very large portion of our suffering and pain in life comes through the window of having to justify our world, having to justify our lives. I'm going on a holiday because I earned it. I'm letting my hair down on the weekend because I had a crap week. We do find it quite hard, and this might sound like a judgment, it's just an observation. We do seem to find it quite hard to live in the moment. In a very busy first world, fast-paced moving culture like this, we find it hard to live in the moment. We often live in the past, or we live in the future. And living in the past and the future is just another way that we are justifying our current existence. So let's say, I'll give you an example. If someone's really shitty and angry, someone will say, well, you seem really shitty and angry. We don't know that well how to own it. We often say, well, it's only because this happened. It's only because I got in road rage this morning at 9 a.m. And, you know, it could be 5 p.m. now. It's like, well, how are we still shitty? Well, it's because we're living in the past of what happened earlier in the day. Or someone will say, oh, I thought you were doing a detox. How come you're having a bottle of wine tonight? Oh, you know what? I felt really anxious. So we often live in a world of justification, and it does cause a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. Now, why do I say that? Well, one of the 6 DLFF principles and the backbone to everything we do at Drink Less, Feel Fresh is called own the moment. Own the moment is the art and ability to mentally and emotionally be aware of the moment at hand and live and operate authentically in that moment. And the more you can learn to do that, the less you will be triggered to consume alcohol and run behavioral patterns that seem to sabotage your life. Now, you might be thinking, well, why is that, Tom? What is the link between living in the moment and reducing sabotaging behaviors? Well, I'll tell you. Living in the moment, 9 times out of 10, will produce a feeling of proud or contentment. Say it again. Living in the moment, 9 times out of 10, and the art of living in the moment, regardless of what's happening yesterday, regardless of what's happening tomorrow, living in the moment, 9 times out of 10, will produce a feeling of proud or contentment. Proud or contentment. Justification, 9 times out of 10, living justified, always having to justify your existence, will more often than not lead to feeling guilt. Lead you to feeling guilt. I'll give you an example. Has anybody ever had a really busy work week and you think to yourself, I'm taking a day off. I'm just taking a day off. You know what? I'm taking a day off. I want to take a day off. That's it. and you take a day off and you have the best time. You have the best day. Feel great that you took the day off. Now, has anybody ever really, really wanted to take a day off and they've taken the day off, but the whole time they took the day off, it was along the lines of this. Well, I'm taking the day off because, the work week's been really hard. And you know what? I've got this big meeting coming up and I really need some time off. And the whole time they're living in the moment of having the day off, they're not really living in the moment. They're too busy justifying whilst they're taking the day off. Does that make sense? Like the old saying, if you're going to do something, do it. If you are going to do something, do it. And I get judged sometimes for saying this, even to big drinkers. If you're going to drink, drink. If you're going to drink, drink. Alcohol itself is not causing you pain. The justification of drinking, the not knowing when to stop, it's not the alcohol itself. If you're going to do something, do it. And that's what this class today is all about, is that when it comes to changing your relationship with alcohol, you need to understand when you get to the fork in the road, when you start second guessing things, when you start thinking about the future. When you've had those one or two drinks and you think, oh, I kind of feel like another one because I just want to chase that one, and the third and the fourth, and you start to think, but am I going to be a bit dusty tomorrow? But what'll happen tomorrow at that lunch? And you start thinking about the future. Or if you start thinking about the past, I used to do this a lot. Oh, but if I had the third, every time in the past I've done this, I've always had 7. Once you start playing into the past and the future, and you start to live in this justifying, you're trying to draw at straws, so to speak. You're trying to get a reason why. You're trying to grab onto a reason that's going to validate apparently enough for you having another drink, which we all know never is good enough, is it? We never actually find a good enough reason to have more drinks. And even if we do, guess what happens? I said it earlier, we end up feeling guilty because that's what justification does. Living in the moment does not require justification. It is the ticket. It is the antidote. It's what every human being fundamentally is looking for, is the art or the ability to live in the moment, to own the moment. And so if you're ever looking for a shortcut or a bit of a, let's call it a shortcut to dramatically changing your relationship with alcohol, then just don't drink if you're justifying. If you're fully feeling it and you're feeling it, you're not overthinking it, you want to have a beverage, great, have a beverage. But if you notice you're justifying it, if you notice that you've already been thinking about it for half an hour before having the beverage, then, excuse me, just clearing my throat. I'm actually just going to have a sip of water. Thank you. At the moment, these classes aren't edited or snippeted, so this is me raw in the flesh. That was me taking a sip of water. If you're listening to this on Spotify, so if you really want to change your relationship with alcohol, just don't worry about when you should be drinking. Just worry about when you should be drinking. It's the best way to change your relationship with alcohol. Don't figure out what's the best time to have a beverage. Figure out when's not the best time to have a beverage, and that's when you're rationalizing and justifying. Now, if you'd like to take this a little bit deeper, well, let's look at the damages that justification does to the body. Okay, because there is some huge psychological and emotional disadvantages and problems that overly justifying your behaviors will lead you to experiencing. Not only are you not living in the moment, right? You're not living in the moment of, let's say it's 3:30 in the afternoon and you want a beverage. If you're thinking about having a beverage but not having one for half an hour, that's 30 minutes you're not living in the moment. Doesn't that make sense? You're actually stuck thinking about something that's going to happen in the future for 30 minutes. You just lost half an hour out of your day when it comes to living in the moment. Isn't that fascinating? If it's 3:30 in the afternoon and you're thinking about having a beverage and you think about having a beverage, an alcoholic beverage for 30 minutes, you've just lost 30 minutes out of your 24-hour day being able to live in the moment. That's living in anxious land. That's living in anxiety. That's living in the future. You're constantly thinking about something that's going to happen in the future. Isn't that fascinating? So why, other than that, of course, which sounds like a bit of a pain in the ass, right? Here's what justification does. When you are caught in thought, trying to rationalize and justify having a beverage, what you need to be aware of is that this is not a thinking problem for you. This is a feeling problem for you. This is not a thinking problem. So when someone's justifying and rationalizing, they get stuck in what's called thought. They get stuck in thinking. What that means is you start to think about all the reasons why you should or all the reasons why you shouldn't have a beverage. Have you felt that before? Does that make sense? Might be nodding your head along. He's listening to this. When you're stuck in justification, you just think about all the reasons why you should and all the reasons why you shouldn't. That's how thinking works. We generally weigh up the pros and the cons. We all know it doesn't really seem to help us much, right? Doesn't seem to get us anywhere. We never seem to get the answer that we want. We either have a beverage and let ourselves down and we feel guilty for it, or we don't have a beverage and we just feel shitty and annoyed for the rest of the night. Here's the thing. This is a feeling problem, not a thinking problem. Now, here's a little bit of emotional mastery 101, so to speak. When we are feeling something and it feels, we feel confused about what we're feeling. Now, this often happens, unconsciously. But when we are confused about a feeling, what confusion about a feeling means, it means there's a conflict of feelings. You're feeling a couple of things at more than one time. You're feeling like you want something. You're feeling like you don't want something. There's often a conflict of feelings. When you are living in a certainty, a non-conflicting feeling, you generally just act out of that state and you feel pretty good about it. So when you're experiencing an emotional conflict, what the brain does when it doesn't know how to process that, or the body doesn't know how to process that, it'll start what's called the justification mindset. Okay. So when we are feeling a conflict of emotions, we're not aware of it, the brain will take over and try to rationalize itself, try to rationalize the body. Okay. This is what I call logical stability. So we're feeling unstable in the body. We're feeling an emotion. If you're new to this podcast, by the way, and you're not aware of what we're discussing, jump back to some of the earlier podcasts. You'll learn all about suppressing emotions and the emotional side of reducing your alcohol intake. So when we are in feelings and there's a conflict of feelings, we don't know how to process that, otherwise known as if the feelings become too much, and this can all happen unconsciously, by the way. I'm not saying someone's going through the day, they start to have a panic attack. No, this can happen. This happens very quickly. You won't even know the feelings there. That's why I'm sharing this with you. Try this on. This is going to be a great insight into mastering your emotional world. If you find yourself justifying, it means whether you know it or not, you are feeling quite a lot. Isn't that interesting? If you find yourself justifying and trying to rationalize, should I have a drink? Should I not have a drink? That's a green sign to let you know that you're feeling some stuff and you don't know it. And so if you picture the body like this, you're an emotional being and you're also a logical being. We have our body, our heart, our organs, our physical experience. And then we have our thinking, our rationalization, our logical part of the brain, which rationalizes and perceives things in the world. So when you are feeling quite a lot, what the body will do, I'll try to explain this the best way I can. What the body will do is it'll jump into rationalization. So it'll try to control the emotional experience that you're having. The way human beings control their emotional experiences is by taking action. Okay, so if you haven't heard this from me before, we're emotional beings. And to stabilize emotional beings, we create habits. Habits are formed out of taking actions. And so when you're feeling a lot emotionally, the reason why you will reach for a beverage is because you are trying to gravitate towards an old action step that would provide you with stability. For example, come home feeling really tired. Your body will rationalize that you're really tired, so you should switch off by having a beverage. You'll take action. That'll be a habit. That habit provides you with what you feel is emotional stability. Isn't this freaking incredible? Like, I'm not holding back here, team. This is deep psychology, emotional mastery, habit forming, habit breaking that I'm teaching you right now. So when you are feeling emotions, the body will create logic out of those emotions, and it can all happen outside of your awareness, by the way. I'm not saying you're going home going, I'm feeling resentment towards someone today, and I don't want to feel that, so I'm going to rationalize it, and I've been a good person all day, so I'm going to have beverage. That's not what's happening. It's happening unconsciously, very quickly, quicker than the click of a finger. So when we feel, our body rationalizes and tries to justify what's going on. Oh, this is happening because this is happening because this is happening because this. And then it'll gravitate you towards taking action on what's called your habits. And your habits are your daily, weekly, and monthly action steps that provide you with emotional regulation. That's really, really important to understand. That's the dynamics of why we justify in life. And here I can probably say this to you now that we're this far into the class. We justify, I'll say it again this way. The more you have to justify, the more emotionally unstable you are. Take that with a grain of salt. That's not a clinical term. Like emotional unstable, you need medication. No, 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 no. But take it as I say it, though. The more you have to justify, the more emotionally unstable you are. The less you need to justify your living, the more emotionally sound and stable you are. So whenever someone says to me, "Oh, it's just a habit that I need to kick," I think to myself, "Oh, we got some emotions to work on here." We are emotional beings first. We are creatures of habit second. Always emotional beings first, creatures of habit second. So if you would like an action step to take to start reducing the need to justify your relationship with alcohol and reduce your alcohol intake, here's a great question that you can ask. Okay, but here's how it looks. The minute you notice that you were justifying, excuse me, the minute you notice that you're justifying, could be before you go into a social event, you start thinking, should I have some drinks? Should I not? Should I? When you start to rationalize and you're trying to talk yourself into it or trying to talk yourself out of it, just ask yourself this very profound question, which is, what am I feeling? This is a learnt skill set, by the way. It takes practice, but ask yourself, what am I feeling? You can actually become one of your own best therapists, literally, in life if you can learn this process. You don't become aware of what you're feeling first, by the way. That's not how this journey works. You just become aware that you're overthinking something. You just become aware that you're rationalizing. You're trying to rationalize. You just become aware that you're trying to justify having a beverage. And if you can just interrupt yourself, the minute you become aware, what it'll look like is you're going out to dinner with some people, you weren't going to have a drink, and then all of a sudden you think, oh, actually, I might have a beverage when I get there. And then you start having a conversation with yourself. And 5 minutes into the conversation, you'll probably start laughing now. And you go, oh my God, I'm doing that thing Tom Cartwright was talking about. I'm rationalizing. What am I justifying? And you interrupt and you ask yourself this question: what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And the minute you can do that, you shift your awareness out of justification living to living in the moment. And living in the moment provides you all the answers that you'd ever need. Not living in the moment will call on you to consistently run habits that you've been running for years. They could be crap habits. Sugar, coffee, chocolate, caffeine, alcohol, etc., etc. So the question to ask yourself is, what am I feeling? Two or three biggest key lessons and learnings from today's class, team, is number one, the only time you shouldn't drink is when you're trying to rationalize having a drink. The only time you shouldn't drink is when you're trying to rationalize or justify why you should have a drink. People do this before. People do it after, by the way. Here's a little bit of bonus insight. The most unattractive thing is when someone tells them, like someone has a drink and then they don't own the fact they had a drink and they just go straight into justification. Oh, you know what? I wasn't going to, but this happened. Or you know what? I wasn't going to, but Debbie's my good friend and she said here and she bought me a $150 bottle of champagne. I didn't want to say no. Oh, I didn't want to have a drink, but I was at this work event and my boss kind of wanted me to have a beverage. I didn't want to have a drink, but my husband or my partner or my girlfriend or my friend or my sister or my son, if someone said something and it really triggered me and I just had to have a beverage. So whether you're justifying before or after, you got to call BS on it. It's just BS. We got to learn to live in the moment. That's what we want for everybody at Drink Less Feel Fresh. Whether you drink a lot, you drink a little, or you don't drink at all, living in the moment is the answer and the outcome and the solution to everything you've ever wanted. So number one, the only time not to drink is during justification or rationalization. Number two, justification tends to lead to feeling guilty. Justification tends to lead to feeling guilty. Number three, justifying and rationalizing is often just a suppressing of emotion. So the more rationalization, the more justification we live in, the more we're just suppressing our feeling. And the question to ask yourself, if you'd like to apply this and start having a crack at it, is when you notice that you're justifying. Could be before your first beverage, could be after your second beverage, could be after your third beverage. Start thinking too much. That should I or shouldn't I? Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And to lead a horse to water, so to speak, give you an insight that'll kind of let you know where you could take this, is that 9 times out of 10, you'll become aware that you don't know what you want. If you're living in justification, 9 times out of 10, there'll be a conflict and there'll be an uncertainty, which means you don't know what you want. And that's why the brain rationalizes and tries to get you to do something. It says that the brain's saying, I don't like the uncertainty here. This feels weird. I don't know what I want to be doing. So I'll give you some options. You can either keep drinking or you can stop. And yeah, last one to leave you with, I think, when it comes to your relationship with alcohol, great quote, I think, was by Mark. I believe it was by Mark Burris, huge Australian entrepreneur, has done incredible things. Which is, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. And I think that as well as like, don't, never drink from justification. But when it comes to alcohol, if it's not a fuck yes, it's fuck no. And so that really wraps up today's class pretty well, which is like, if you're having to justify, it's obviously not an F yes, is it? If you're having to rationalize, it's obviously not an F yes. You probably don't know what you want. And the best time to never have a drink is when you don't know what you want. If you don't want it, you don't want it. Even if it feels uncomfortable. If you're not really keen on it and it's just like a rationalizing and justification experience, you don't want it. Same applies for business ventures. Same applies for relationship experiences. If it's not an F yes, it's an F no. And I hope that really wraps up today's call really well. For those of you watching live, trust you've absolutely loved the way to kickstart the week feeling fresh AF. Here's to another week, reminding ourselves what matters most, always remembering to live in awareness, whether we drink or don't drink. Do not switch off autopilot. Just keep living, do not maintain autopilot. Keep living in awareness. Keep making choices for yourself. Have an incredible week. Here's to drinking less and feeling fresh. See you same time, same place next week for those of you that love the accountability. Otherwise, once again, you can watch this series live on YouTube. There's plenty of episodes up there, and you can watch the recordings on Spotify. Big love. See you next week.